Welcome to Moveable Dough. This is Steve Danielson. Each week on Moveable Dough, I sit down with a composer to talk about their lives, their musical journeys, and, of course, their music. Come with me as we explore each unique path into composition and what they have to share with the world. For a complete archive of episodes, as well as access to the shorter segments called Movable Snippets, visit my website, sdcompose.com/movabledough. Hey, this is Steve. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Moveable Dough. My guest today is Janice Kapp Perry. Janice was born in Ogden, Utah, and now lives in Provo, Utah. She received her music training at Brigham Young University, where she played percussion instruments in the concert band and orchestra. She has amassed an impressive catalog of almost 3,000 songs, 108 recorded albums, 2 full-length musicals, 8 sacred cantatas, and albums in Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, and Chinese. Janice's works have been performed by the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, the Mormon Youth Symphony and Chorus, country duo Brooks and Dunn, Gladys Knight, the Oddsman's Second Generation, and many, many more. She has 5 children, 13 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren. Janice Kapp Perry, welcome to Moveable Dough.
Thank you, Steve. I'll do my best.
So, Janice, I can't tell you what an honor it is for me to have you on my podcast. And despite your large creative output, I know your name and music are not necessarily familiar to much of my audience. For me, however, you've been a household name since as long as I can remember. I'd like to start, though, by going back to your youth. So I understand that you were actually quite an athlete in your youth. What were your favorite sports to play?
I was a fast pitcher until I was 40.
Wow.
I lived on a farm, and my brother taught me how to play all the sports. He was 4 years older, and so I just loved them my whole life. And I loved playing all of them, but that's the one that I really focused on till 40.
Wow, you were playing fast pitch softball till 40?
Yes,
Wow.
for the church and for city teams.
That's fantastic. What position did you play? Or did you just play
Pitcher.
all of them? Oh, you were doing pitching.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. Did you enjoy other sports as well? Were you playing anything else?
Oh yeah, racquetball, volleyball, any sport. Even football with my brothers.
That's fantastic. So how did your music education begin? Were you taking piano lessons as a child?
Yeah, my parents were in a dance band all the time I was growing up, and on our little farming community. They played for every dance I ever went to, school or church. And we just had a home full of music. We had a mixed quartet of children.
Oh, wow.
And so we sang around the piano all the time with mother, and they played drums and piano in the dance band. So it just came natural to me to be really interested in music.
Yeah. Were you singing out in the community as well?
Singing?
Yeah. It wasn't a vocal quartet. It was an instrumental quartet.
Oh no, we just did the quartet at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just at home.
Mhm.
So I've heard you describe 2 lucky breaks that sort of launched your songwriting career. Could you tell us about these breaks that you had and that helped give you the motivation and time you needed to write music?
Well, the main one was that after I turned 40, I broke my ankle playing basketball. And I just was devastated because I knew it'd be a long time before I could play again. And the bishop came the next day to check on me and to ask me to write the roadshow music while I was laid up. And I said, "What makes you think I can write music?" And he said, "Just a feeling. I know you can." I said, "Well, I didn't know that yet, so I'll give it a try." I did study it for 2 years at BYU, but that's all. So I propped my foot up and started writing, and it was just magical. I thought, why haven't I been right? He wanted all music because he said if it's original, we'll win. I am competitive, so I wrote 15 minutes of music. That doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I just knew I couldn't wait to get past the roadshow so I could start writing for real.
That's fantastic. So what was the first thing you wrote after the road show? Do you remember?
Yeah, Where is Heaven was the first song that I wrote. My one brother played to have it published, and my other brother, who's an artist, gave me a painting of Christ with the children to put on the cover. No one was writing back then except Lex de Azevedo.
Right.
I was in the 60s. And so I I took my little sheet music door to door to music in bookstores, LDS. And it caught on so fast that because no one was writing. But then I thought, I'm just going to go all in. And so I started writing other things, other religious songs. And Where's Heaven was our first album with, uh, the second roadshow year, Merrill Jensen was our stake roadshow director. And he says,
Wow.
time we recorded your music. And I said, no, we can't afford it. And he said, find 10 people that will loan you $1,000 for a year and you'll pay them back with interest, a little higher than they're getting. I hated doing it, but I did do it. I found 5 people, and my mother gave the other 5,
Wow.
and we had it, we had it paid back in no time. We went to California, excuse me, and got big 78 LP records,
Wow, that's
5,000,
fantastic.
5,000 of them. I don't know, they just took off just because almost no one was doing it. So from then on, we got a line of credit until we didn't need one anymore, and just kept going until I think we've had 110 recordings.
Wow. That's
First, we
incredible.
had 78 LPs and then cassettes. We didn't fall for what was the other one?
What,
And
the eight
there,
track?
no, we didn't fall for that one. And then there's CDs the rest of the time, but not even them now.
Yeah, now it's all just streaming and
We can't
online.
even we can't even give our CDs away as gifts because no one has a player.
That's true. I teach middle school and none of my students have CD players.
Yeah. Well, I'm 84. It's all right to retire. I've had a couple of strokes, but have a good life. My husband died, and a few years ago, my children work with me, and we still can have a lot of fun in music.
Yeah, that's great. Now, was the count I gave at the beginning of the show correct? You have 20 great grandchildren? Is that correct?
Yes, yes,
That
it is.
that is quite the progeny.
The greats multiply faster.
Yeah. Now, I think you are my first guest that is a previous member of the prestigious Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, or as it was known then, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. You remember the choir from 93 to 99. So, what is one of your favorite memories from singing with the Tabernacle Choir?
Well, I never expected to be in there, so when the first time they sang Battle Hymn of the Republic, I just couldn't believe I was there, and I couldn't even sing. As far as my own music, and they've done several of them, it was when they sang A Child's Prayer. And I just thought, I can't believe this is happening. Craig Jessup asked me to write a beginning to it, add something on at the beginning. And so for the Tabernacle Choir, and we published it later as a choir piece. I did add an introduction to the song, and then they sing it.
Yeah, I believe I've done that with my state choir before with that arrangement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So one thing I didn't know about until recently was your close collaboration with Senator Orrin Hatch. You've set a number of his poems and lyrics to music, including one that was performed at National Prayer Breakfast in 2001 and at the second inauguration of George W. Bush in 2005. So how did this collaboration with Senator Hatch begin?
We were at the same funeral. His daughter married my cousin's son,
Okay.
and uh, my cousin's sister had died. And so I came to the funeral, and so did Orrin. He came through the line, and and said, I've been enjoying your music. I was kind of in awe of meeting him. And he said, I write poetry, we should collaborate. And I
So he
said,
reached out to you. That's awesome.
yes, he did. He said, let's try it. And you'll have to critique me and teach me how. And I said, teach Orrin Hatch, okay. But he did need some help because the lyrics are a little different than just writing his poetry.
Right.
I went back there with Tabernacle Choir after we got started and had lunch with him and his wife between concerts. And he pulled out a book of poetry that he had written, this thick.
Wow.
And they were mostly about political situations, patriotic things that he'd been involved in. And I thought, wow, these are very good. And I said, there's a difference between lyrics and poetry. And so we'd need to work together on that. And he said, well, teach me. I'm an open book. You just teach me. I said, well, you try writing a song and then I can critique it. So I sent it or he sent me one, and that's where we started. I said, here's what we can do in lyrics and here's what we can't do. But he sent me 10 poems, not just one. And
Wow.
I said, well, let's start with one. He says, he said it's really difficult being back there. He even used the phrase that it's sometimes the depth of degradation.
Hmm.
And he said, for me to be able to come home and concentrate on a gospel theme and write lyrics with you means everything. So in the end, we have recorded 6 albums of our things together. We both had a feeling about Heal Our Land. He had it when he was writing it, and it's one of the best things he ever wrote. And I had it when I was writing mine. I said, Orrin, did you have the feeling that something big was going to happen with this one? And he said, yes, I did. And it did.
Yeah, we'll get a chance to talk about that one a little bit later in the program as well. I did not realize that he was so prolific at writing
Oh,
poetry and
yeah.
lyrics. That's amazing.
I didn't know it either until then, but it turned into a wonderful friendship that really meant everything to me.
Yeah, so what
Because
sort of quality did you find in his poetry that sort of kept this collaboration going for so long?
well, it was all in harmony with the gospel.
Okay.
And we wrote patriotic songs and we wrote church songs. But it was hard to tell the difference because the gospel was through his patriotic songs too.
Yeah.
I think those are some of our best work, actually, the patriotic ones.
Wonderful. Well, Janice, you have inspired so many lives with your music. I wonder what other composers or songwriters have served as inspiration for you.
Well, I didn't have any to begin with. I didn't know of any people in the church who were writing. But here's what happened when we didn't know that a primary book was coming out. None of us did, the writers, and there were a few then. But we felt just so impressed to write children's music. And so when they told us there was a hymn book, I sent in 10 of my songs, and they chose them. I mean, they were ready. And so that's happened with some others. I guess one of my favorite writers is Vanya Watkins for the
Uh-huh.
church. I love what she's done. If I could think about it, there's many others now, but uh, I don't know. I just felt my own urge to focus on children's music, and I had They chose 8 of them for the book, and then they commissioned 2 more, one on the steps of prayer and
And the other one.
the other one.
Well, that's great.
Um,
So before we talk about your music directly, I'd love to know about your process. When you sit down to write a new song, how do you start? Do you start with lyrics, or do you have a method you follow when you write?
always lyrics. It's easier to shape music around lyrics than it is lyrics around music.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've talked to other people, and I think that that's true of almost everyone who writes.
Yeah.
And so I start with a poem, just and when you have other verses, they have to be just the same rhythm exactly from verse to verse. And that was a little bit hard thing to learn for some people that I write with, including Oren, but he got it too. So I just do that. I had right when I started writing, I had something pretty awful happen to my hand. This hand, and when I would try to write in this position, these fingers would pull under and my wrist would pull under.
Hmm.
It was awful for me because that's what I wanted to do, and it has to this day it still does.
Wow.
But I had to learn to. So I learned to write sitting in my chair, and I write the words, and by the time I'm done, the music is all there in my head. I,
Okay.
I can't spend a lot of time at the piano. This is rather painful. So it's always just the music first and then the words, and I do my best to play it, or I get my daughter to play it when it's written.
Do you write out the music by hand as well, or do you have someone else help write
No,
out the
no,
music?
I write it out. I learned to do that
Okay.
during my BYU music theory years.
And as technology progressed, did you still find writing by hand was the easiest, or did you ever switch over to like computer notation?
I never did, but my husband did.
Oh yeah.
At a certain point, we knew he had to join our company, or we'd have to hire someone. And he loved that. He loves languages and computer languages, and he just took it over. I mean, every time he'd look in here and see if I had anything done, and he'd snatch it from me. He loved it. So he did it for 30 years. He did all of it, and it was so convenient. But for me, it's just pencil and paper.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, before we take a quick break, I'm going to ask you to play a quick game that this week we're calling Il Prete Rosso. I'm going to ask you a series of 5 true or false statements about Antonio Vivaldi, and you're a winner just for playing the game. So just do your best. And those of you at home, you can play along and see how many you get right. All right. Number 1, true or false? Vivaldi received the nickname Il Prete Rosso, the Red Priest, because of the color his face would turn when he lost his fiery temper.
Yes.
It's actually false. It was due to his red hair.
I told you I wouldn't know.
That's okay. Number 2, J.S. Bach reportedly disliked most of Vivaldi's music.
Yes.
That's actually false as well. He was a huge Vivaldi fan and
Hey,
transcribed several of Vivaldi's concerti.
I don't know hardly who Vivaldi is.
That's okay. All right. Number 3, the most recent lost piece by Vivaldi to be discovered was found in 2006.
True.
That is true. His opera Agrippo was last performed in 1730, just found in 2006. All right. Number 4, true or false? Arguably one of Vivaldi's most famous works, The Four Seasons, was part of an even larger work called The Incredible Earth.
True.
Well, true-ish, false-ish, sort of a trick question on that one. They are part of a larger body of 12 concerti called The Contest Between Harmony and Invention.
This is awful. I don't know any of these things.
It's okay. You're doing great. You're doing great just for playing. Last one. True or false? Though he went to the monastery to become a priest, he had to abandon the call because of his asthma.
True and false.
This one is actually true, so I'll give it to you. The asthma prevented him from delivering the mass, so he had to give up being a priest.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for playing my game. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will listen to some of Janice's compositions. Hey, this is Steve. I know you're sitting here listening to Moveable Dough and you're thinking to yourself, how could I make a podcast, Steve? Well, let me tell you. Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. Okay, here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or your computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you could start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I've really enjoyed the flexibility that it allows me in creating my podcast. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome back. This is Steve Danielson. I'm talking today with Janice Kapp Perry. So one of the things we didn't talk about in the first segment of the show is that many of your best-known songs were written as a response to your faith and your membership in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So that is how I know Janice's music so well. Many of her songs are used by what is called Primary in our church, an organization for children from ages 3 to 11, where they learn gospel principles. Most of the pieces we're discussing today will fit into this category. We're going to start today with a child's prayer. This song begins with a heartfelt question that many people have asked through the ages. Heavenly Father, are you really there? And do you hear and answer every child's prayer? So can you tell us about writing this song and what you hope children will learn from it?
That's my people ask what my favorite song is that I've ever written is, and it's that one. Without a doubt. I mean, we've spoken all over the world in several countries. Every primary knows it and sings it in their own language. I, I guess it was LDS Living magazine had hundreds of people tell them what was their favorite song ever, and somebody told me, did you see their list? And that A Child's Prayer is number one.
Wow.
I said, no, I don't think so. I didn't see it, and I don't think it could be, because I know who all the artists are and what beautiful music they've written. So I called them up and said, is that true? And they said it's not only true, it was by a landslide. That's their favorite song ever.
Wow.
And that's how I felt about it. I don't know. It's holds a special place in my heart. And Tabernacle Choir kind of sings it now and then. And I introduced every fireside I ever gave with a medley of my primary songs. With that, it's the first one. And everybody knew it. I don't know. It just worked.
Can you think back to when you wrote it and sort of what was in your mind as you were writing?
I've had, because of the disability with my hand, I have said a few times in my prayers, Heavenly Father, are you really there? And that prayer was never answered in the way I had hoped. I talked to Elder Maxwell once about it, and he said, I can only say that the Lord will not withhold any blessing that He's designed for your good. He said, you'll come to know that there's a reason for you to have that challenge. So I forgot about it, and I can't play the piano in public, and that was sad. But truly, that's what I was thinking of when I wrote it.
That's great. And I think the message of the song is so wonderful. And I think that's why it touches people, because you have this heartfelt cry in the first verse, but then you have the answer in the second verse where someone's comforting, saying, pray, listen, your Heavenly Father is there. And then you have this wonderful partner song where you sing both of those verses at the same time. And I think that's why it touches people so much.
Steve, when I first wrote it, it was a child singing, and it was the Lord answering.
Right.
Pray, I am here. The church asked me to change it. They said we can't quote the Lord with anything he didn't say
Uh-huh.
that we know. But they said, if you say pray, he is there. It can be sung by a parent or a parent and child or any two people.
Yeah.
And it was really good advice. And I had to learn that from them. So it was part of my education by the
Fantastic.
church.
We all learn. All right. Well, we are going to take some time here and we're going to listen to a child's prayer.
Heavenly Father, are you really there? And do you hear and answer every child's prayer? Some say that heaven is far away, but I feel it close around me as I pray. Heavenly Father, I remember now something that Jesus told disciples long ago. Suffer the children to come to me. Father, in prayer I'm coming now to thee. Pray, he is there. Speak, he is listening. You are his child. His love now surrounds you. He hears your prayer. He loves the children. Of such is the kingdom of heaven. Heavenly Father, are you there? And do you hear and answer every listening? Some say that heaven is far child, but I feel it close around me as I praise you. Heavenly Father, I remember now something that Jesus told disciples long ago. Suffer the children to come to me. Father, in prayer I'm coming now to thee.
Our second piece today is I love to see the temple. So, what is so important about the temple that made you decide that children needed this song?
Well, it came a little bit as an assignment, really. The stake I was living in across town in Provo here, they were wanting to, the primary, excuse me, stake primary president wanted to have a 5-minute temple time all year and asked me to write something that would help the children love the temple. And so I wrote it for her and they approved it and it was sung there during that year. And then I had no temple when I grew up in Oregon. We had to go to Idaho Falls. Every time we would come around that curve into Idaho Falls and we see the temple, the thought would just come to me as a teenager, I'd love to see the temple. And so I just chose that as my title. One of the sad things that was sweet but sad is a couple took their baby to the temple in Washington, D.C. And they took turns going in to do a session while the other tended the baby on the grounds. And while the mother was in the session, well, she sang the baby to sleep, singing "I Love to See the Temple," and then she went in. And when she came out, the police were there and an ambulance, and some kind of accident. The baby, it was not not a baby, a young child,
Mhm.
had some kind of accident, and I never wanted to ask how. And she had been killed
Wow.
during that session. And she said it brought me so much comfort to me to know that the last words I sang to her were, "I love to see the temple." So that's a very sad story. As
Yeah.
for me, we had a little baby that was born to us that only lived 8 days. And I love to see the temple, which I can see out of my Provo, Utah window now, because it reminds me of our ceiling there, and that he's gone, but not forever
Yeah.
because
I
of
can see that beautiful picture of the Provo Temple behind you as well.
oh yeah, you can.
So we have used that song with our own children as well as we've traveled around the country and seen different temples. It definitely has a very catchy melody that children will grasp onto. And so I want to sort of go into more of a practical side. When you're writing for children's voices, how do you approach writing differently than if you're writing for adult voices?
Well, I haven't thought about that much. I guess it's just keeping it simpler. Let the melody go where they expect it to go. They'll learn it easier. That's something I've never considered. You just kind of automatically do it different for children.
Okay. We're now going to listen to I Love to See the Temple.
I love to see the temple. I'm going there someday to feel the Holy Spirit, to listen and to pray. For the temple is a house of God, a place of love and beauty. I'll prepare myself while I am young. This is my sacred duty. I'd love to see the temple. I'll go inside someday. I'll covenant with my Father. I'll promise to obey. For the temple is a holy place where we are sealed together. As a child of God, I've learned this truth. Our family is forever.
All right. Our third piece today, I'd like to talk about Heal Our Land, which you wrote with Senator Orrin Hatch, and we talked about earlier. Could you tell us a little bit more about the background of writing this piece? Where did the initial idea come from?
Well, it was at a time when our country needed healing. I don't remember the year, but it was Orrin that initiated it. He said, "I want to write a song called Heal Our Land," because he said, we need help with spiritual help back here. And he said, "I want to write it, but I want you to fix it and put your ideas in very strongly." He said, "I have a feeling something will happen, good will happen with this song." And he said, "I think when you start writing the music, you'll get the same feeling." And we had written many patriotic songs there and and gospel songs. but this one was kind of a combination. And when I sat down and went through my routine of praying to know how to write it, and all the time I was writing it, I thought, he's right. Things are going to happen with this song, but I don't know what. And I called him up and said, this song practically wrote itself. And I had the same feeling that you did. So it's kind of up to you back there to see where it gets used. He gave copies to all his colleagues.
Wow.
And then he had a black singer, Wintley Phipps, that he wanted to sing it at the prayer breakfast, which he did. And he's good. He came out and sang it on our recording too. And I don't know, that song, it's hard to get Mac Wilberg to actually accept a song that you've written into the choir. But he did write an arrangement of Heal Our Land that the Tabernacle Choir did too.
Wow.
I don't know, and it's been sung many times at the National Prayer Breakfast and on patriotic occasions. So I don't know, I think it's maybe the most important song that we wrote together.
And is this the piece that was sung at President Bush's second inauguration as well?
Yes, it was.
And how was that experience? Hearing your song sung there.
Yeah, well, I didn't know it was going to be in. And so I was here watching it on TV. I don't think he knew for sure until it happened. But it was actually just the last song that was sung in public before the inauguration began. It was part of it because everyone was there.
Yeah.
And he came out and sang it on our recording. I think I mentioned that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to now listen to Heal Our Land. All right. Lastly, we're going to talk about Love is Spoken Here. And I think this song can resonate with so many people. This is another beautiful partner song about prayer and family prayer and praying with your family. Talk about this concept and what you were thinking as you wrote it.
Well, the situation when it started is my husband and I were attending a party for an outgoing stake president somewhere in north of here. I can't remember the name of the next city, but we had a little break in the meeting there, and I said to my husband, who was used to this kind of thing, I need a topic for the church music contest for children, and I need it really soon. And can you help me? As he often did. And he said, well, how long have you known about this? And I said, well, just this 1 year. And he just rolled his eyes and he said, okay. A little later, he pointed he said, look above the sink in there. There's a beautiful cross-stitch sampler that says, Love is Spoken Here. That's your title. And I loved it. And I thought that could be one of these two-part songs where you sing one and the other and then sing them together. And so I came home and wrote it. First year, it didn't do anything in the contest. Second year, it won first prize, same piece, different judge. He told me who he was. And he said, that's a crime that wasn't chosen last year. I won't tell who it was. Anyway, that's how it came about. And I've entered it in hoping it will be in the new hymn book still.
Yeah.
They have told me the most they will say right now is that some of mine, they will tell me they're being considered for it. But that's one step further than hearing nothing.
Right. That's further than I've gotten. So
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any feedback from my submissions.
No, nobody has. Anyway, I kind of have faith that it will be.
Yeah. So either thinking about this song specifically or other songs, you've mentioned hearing the Tabernacle Choir sing your pieces or the, being performed at inauguration. Have there ever been any moments that have sort of surprised you where suddenly you're hearing music that you've written, whether this piece or another, that you weren't expecting in a certain location or a certain situation?
Mm-hmm. Oh, my husband and I did a tour of 8 cities in Japan, followed by 8 cities in Taiwan. And I actually learned my songs in those languages. I was 70 years old, so it was our last trip. But we went in their primary, and they started with that song, just almost yelling it. It wasn't too reverent, but they all knew the words, and I heard it in Japanese. And I kind of was singing along because I had learned it to sing on our fireside with the whole group. And I don't know, I just didn't know the music had spread so far. And when we spoke in the main session with their whole stake, they sang it with us. So, and when we got over to Taiwan, same thing.
Wow.
So because they were in the primary book, they spread.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
And we have 5 albums in Japanese too. So that helped them to spread there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. Well, we are now going to listen to Love is Spoken Here.
To
teaching me how to trust and obey, and the things they teach are crystal clear, for love is spoken here. Mine is a home where I run all reach out. His blind precious grace, as she bows her head to part, with father and mother leading the way, teaching me how to trust and obey, and the things they teach are crystal clear, for love is spoken here. I can often feel the Savior near when love is spoken here.
So, Janice, I know you were retired. Are you still writing music, or are you enjoying retirement?
Both.
Yeah.
I'm not writing a lot anymore because there's no way to get the music out now. It's just not done that way. We have every piece we have done is on the download sites, all of them.
Yeah.
But that's the only way people get their music now. And so the only thing I've been writing for a couple of years now is a stake president, David Larson from in Dallas East Stake. He said, let's write songs based on the conference talks.
Oh, nice.
And I said, okay, let's try that. That would be nice. He is a wonderful poet, and he's taken the essence of the talks for the apostles and the first presidency and the women that speak. And he writes a hymn text for them. And he's just wonderful at it. He was just released as a stake president last week, but they sent them to me. We've just finished all the hymns. We've done it for about 8 conferences.
Wow.
And so we attribute it to them, but it's our take on what they said.
Sure.
But we make it as close to what they said as we can. And then at one time we decided, well, let's just do our favorite one each year. And he said, that's always Elder Holland, isn't it? And I said, yes, let me give you a challenge. Write a hymn for every conference talk he has given as an apostle. I think it was 46 or something. He went back and did it, and we have published them all in a little choir book.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, so, and we've done the others too, but this is the one that was just dedicated to him.
That's great.
He was the general authority was in Chile when my husband and I served our mission there.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
we have a very close relationship with him.
Yeah.
And you love that man. Love them all. And those messages, people can sing them in their homes or wherever. They can't, we can't distribute them.
Sure. Well, Janice, if my listeners want to learn more about you and your music, could you plug your website?
Is that my jkperry@mac.com? Or I'm not computer wise.
I think it's just JaniceKappPerry.com.
Oh, that's what it is.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Steve, for knowing that.
Well, hey, listeners out there, here at the beginning of season 6, you may have noticed the awesome new logo that I'm using now. This logo looks great on a shirt, a mug, a sticker, a hoodie, or any other number of items. This design is available through TeePublic, and you can get there through my website, sdcompose.com/movabledough, and click where it says merch. Let others know how much you enjoy this show. Well, Janice, it was a privilege and an honor to talk with you today. Thank you for joining me on Moveable Dough.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a good work you're doing.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed some of your others sessions too.
Well, my guest today was composer Janice Kapp Perry. If you have a recommendation for a future guest or an idea for the show, please email me at movabledough@gmail.com. This is Steve Danielson. Keep the music moving.